At 12:45 a.m., the North Atlantic sky exploded with white rockets. Not one, not two. 8 separate distress flares rose into the freezing darkness. On the deck of a nearby ship, officers stopped and stared. They clearly saw the flashes cutting through the night. They watched them rise and fade. Less than 20 miles away, a massive liner was dying. Water was swallowing her bow. Panic was spreading across her decks. That ship was the RMS Titanic, and the vessel watching those rockets, the SS Californian. Its engines were silent, its wireless operator was asleep, and its captain made a decision that would stain maritime history forever. Because while over 1,500 people fought for their lives, this ship did nothing. The question is not whether they saw the signals. The question is, why didn't they move? Minutes before the collision, Titanic sent an ice warning to the SS Californian. The reply came back irritated. "Shut up, I am busy." Titanic's wireless operator was overloaded with passenger traffic. Frustrated, Californian's operator Cyril Evans shut down his radio and went to bed around 11:30 p.m. Less than 40 minutes later, Titanic struck the iceberg. At 12:15 a.m., distress calls began. CQD, then SOS. Again and again. Several ships heard it and responded, but the closest ship? Silence. No operator awake, no reply sent. On deck, officers saw white rockets rising in the distance. They reported them to Captain Stanley Lord. Repeated rockets, clear signals. Maritime custom was simple. Rockets at sea meant danger. Before we go deeper into that silence, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, because no one else can give you research-driven videos like ours. Because what followed wasn't chaos. It was hesitation. Captain Stanley Lord was asleep when the first rockets were reported. An officer woke him. "Sir, a ship is firing rockets off our port side." Lord stepped onto the bridge and stared into the dark Atlantic. He saw the distant glow. He asked one question. Are they company signals? In 1912, both company and distress rockets were white. There was no universal color code. That uncertainty would later become his defense. But the rockets did not appear once. They rose again and again and again. Between 12:45 and 1:45 a.m., at least 8 flares were seen. Repeated signals for over an hour. That is not celebration. That is urgency. Yet the Californian's engines stayed silent in the ice. Lord believed the ship looked small. Too small to be Titanic. But distance at sea at night deceives even experienced officers. Because later investigations suggested something unsettling. The ships may have been far closer than he believed. And if that's true, rescue was not impossible. It was within reach. After the disaster, one question crushed the inquiry. How far was the Californian? Captain Lord claimed 20 miles. Too far to help. But Titanic survivors said they saw a ship's lights from the lifeboats. Close enough to hope rescue was coming. Investigators later re-examined charts and testimony. Some concluded the distance may have been only 10 to 12 miles. Titanic sank in over 2 hours. That was time. Time to raise steam, time to move. Yet the Californian stayed still in the ice, watching rockets. And when the last flare faded, no order was given. By dawn, the ocean was silent. Over 1,500 lives were gone. By dawn, the truth was clear. At 5:30 a.m., the Californian learned Titanic had sunk, not damaged, gone. When they arrived, only lifeboats remained. Hundreds were already dead in the freezing Atlantic. The public demanded answers. The American inquiry began. Then the British investigation followed. Both focused on one man, Captain Stanley Lord. Why wasn't the wireless operator woken? Why weren't engines started when rockets repeated for over an hour? Lord defended himself. He said the ship he saw was not Titanic. He said the rockets were unclear. He said the ice made movement too dangerous. But the court delivered a haunting line. The Californian might have saved many. Not would have, but might have. That word ended his career. Yet decades later, the case would reopen, and the blame would become uncertain again. For decades, Captain Lord carried a single label, the man who did nothing. But in the 1960s, analysts began rechecking the evidence. They re-examined testimony. They recalculated ship positions. Researcher Leslie Harrison argued something critical. Optical illusion at sea can distort distance at night. Cold air over warmer water bends light. Ships can appear closer or farther, even lifted above the horizon, a phenomenon known as a superior mirage. If that occurred that night, then the ship Californian saw may not have been Titanic at all. In 1992, the UK Marine Accident Investigation Branch reviewed the case again. They admitted uncertainties remained. Suddenly, the villain's story cracked. Was Lord negligent or trapped by misjudgment and limited technology? Because even today, we cannot place the ships with absolute certainty. Then the story grew stranger. What if the ship seen that night wasn't the Californian at all? Some researchers proposed a third vessel between Titanic and Californian. Attention turned to the SS Mount Temple. Wireless logs confirm it received Titanic's distress call. Its captain changed course immediately, but heavy ice slowed progress. It never reached the scene in time. Later calculations suggest Mount Temple may have been closer than first believed. Could it have been the lights survivors saw from lifeboats? If so, the Californian might have been farther away than history claims. But critics argue the angles don't align. The timeline is tight. Eyewitness memories conflict. No radar, no GPS, only human perception in freezing darkness. 3 ships, 1 disaster. And even today, historians debate which lights were real and which were illusions. Titanic survivors were adamant. From lifeboats in the freezing Atlantic, many swore they saw a ship's lights, not imagined, visible, steady. Second Officer Charles Lightoller insisted a vessel was within sight. Passengers tried signaling it with rockets and lamps. Hope rose with every flare, then faded when no rescue came. On the Californian, officers told a different story. They saw rockets, yes, but the ship looked small, stationary, not a giant liner. At night, distance at sea deceives the eye. A massive vessel can look like a freighter, and memory is fragile. Trauma bends perception. Cold distorts time. In court, testimonies clashed. Who was right? Freezing survivors staring at hope, or officers convinced nothing was wrong? Because in disasters, truth doesn't just sink, it fractures. Here's where the debate turns uncomfortable. Legally, Captain Lord was never convicted. No prison, no criminal charge. But morally, that's different. At sea, one rule stands above all. You respond to distress immediately, even if unsure, even if ice surrounds you. The inquiry concluded the Californian could have acted sooner. The wireless could have been woken. Engines could have started at the first rockets. Not certainty, but possibility. And sometimes possibility is enough to haunt a legacy. Supporters say Lord chose caution in an ice field. Critics say caution became paralysis. Titanic took hours to sink, hours where lights were watched in the dark. The law may have cleared him, history never fully did. And that leaves one final question. At 2:20 a.m., the Atlantic swallowed the RMS Titanic. The rockets stopped, the lights vanished, the screams faded into wind and ice. Miles away, the SS Californian remained still. By sunrise, the ocean looked calm. Lifeboats drifted, debris floated. A city-sized ship was gone. For over a century, the question has refused to sink. Was Captain Stanley Lord negligent or trapped by limited technology and human misjudgment? 8 rockets were seen, wireless calls went unheard, distance is still debated. What makes this story haunting is not only what happened, but what almost happened. If engines had started sooner, if the wireless had stayed on, how many lives would have been saved? Because sometimes history turns not on evil, but on hesitation. That night in 1912, did the Californian fail Titanic, or did the ocean deceive them both?